Hello, my name is Sam Addington, and I'm going to discuss with you today the effect that Constantine the Great had on the art world and the ushering in of the Christian art. The piece I'm using as an example is the sarcophagus of Junius Bassus. At the time when Emperor Diocletian made it deadly to confess Christianity, there was one young man watching and learning about this man called Jesus that the Christians worshipped. This young man was Constantine, who was Diocletian's right-hand man, but not by choice. When the time presented itself, Constantine fled from under the thumb of Diocletian and returned to his father, who was also an emperor, and together they began a campaign to protect and conquer the lands. When his father died, Constantine himself became the emperor of the West, chosen by his fellow warriors. At one point, he found himself in a battle against Maxentius, an emperor from another area of the kingdom. Constantine was nervous about the battle and afraid he may be outmanned. Although Constantine had grown up offering sacrifice to pagan gods under the direction of Diocletian, this time he decided to pray to the God of the Christians. When he prayed, he received what he felt was a sign from God. This sign was a cross in the sky, and what he saw is two letters, Chi Rho, which are the first two letters of Christ's name. He decided to paint this symbol on his army's shield as homage to Christ. He turned out to be victorious, and he felt it was due to God. He went home and in time issued the Edict of Milan in 313. This edict declared that you could worship as you please, and that there would be tolerance for Christianity. In fact, he favored it. With this proclamation, the Christians who had been hiding in the catacombs to worship began to let their faith be known. But for several years, it was mostly the lower class people who were Christians. It was not popular among the elite, nor with the members of the Senate. But there was one man who decided the time had come for him to let the world know where he stood in the matter of his faith. This was a bold move because this was no commoner. It was Junius Bassus, who was a prefect of the city of Rome. As prefect, his job was to govern the people in the house of the Senate. Junius' father and grandfather had been members of the Senate as well, and like the other members, they all still worshipped the pagan gods. Junius Bassus knew it would not be smart to let everyone around him know of his Christian faith before now, but on his deathbed, he decided to get baptized, and he commissioned his sarcophagus to be covered in Christian art depicting the stories from the Bible. So let's explore what the sarcophagus is. The Greek meaning of the word sarcophagus is flesh eater. It is a coffin for burials, and it was used in the time of the Romans for the wealthy, but this was not the first time period sarcophagi had been around. They dated back to as far as the Egyptians. Some of the cultures that had used the sarcophagi and had an influence on the Roman style were the Greeks and the Etruscans. Sarcophagi were covered in artwork that depicted beliefs and the culture of the time of the deceased that it held. Up until this time, sarcophagi were covered in pagan gods and things in nature that were symbolic of the afterlife in these cultures. Some sarcophagi that were from other time periods that evidenced some of this different art were the Asiatic and the Attic sarcophagi. They were usually made of marble, but sometimes they were made of lead. These sarcophagi differed from that of the Metropolitan Roman style in their roofs. They had gabled pitched roofs, and the Asiatic were usually large and had a door on one side. The Metropolitan Roman style, which was the style in which Junius Bassus was made, had a flat lid and often had a portrait of the deceased on top. Some scholars think that the images used by the artist are highly symbolic. Some of the symbols show tales of mortals who are granted immortality, Gorgon faces to protect against evil forces, seasons that represent the cycles of life, and victorious scenes that represent the victory over death. The artwork on the sarcophagus of Junius Bassus is reflective of the transformation of the status of Christianity following the reign of Constantine. The sarcophagus that Junius commissioned was covered in scenes from the Bible, yet they still incorporated some of the Greek and Roman styles, such as the columns, and is witnessed by the image of Caelius, who is a Roman symbol that signifies Roman authority and his rule. Even though the symbolism of Christ's feet on his head shows the authority that Christ has over all, it still shows the belief of this culture was in the transitional stage, holding on to something from the past while learning about the new. Also, in this particular scene, you can see Jesus sitting here between Peter and Paul, and you see him depicted as a youth. This shows the lack of knowledge at the time, which was due to the ignorance of the biblical history, since there had not been much knowledge or a way to learn in this era. Most people think that Christian art got its start in the time of Christ, but that is not true. Byzantine art, which is the art of the Eastern Orthodox Church, was the first category of Christian art to really blossom. It was ushered in with the conversion of Constantine and his desire to repay Christ for his many victories. The sarcophagus of Junius Bassus was a beautiful display of this Christian art that was to become so popular for the remainder of time as we know it.